What's the difference between this card and this card? Well, one of them is a first edition. But what makes a first edition? Well, this symbol. But what does it mean when a card is a first edition? And does that make the card rarer? Or is it just a thing? Originally, Pokemon cards were made by Wizards of the Coast. These guys made Pokemon cards from 1995 or 6 to 2003 until Nintendo took over and made the cards themselves. But something that the Wizards of the Coast did that Nintendo didn't was put first edition on, well, the first editions of cards. What did this mean exactly? Well, basically, first edition means that the card came out, well, first. There's a limited number of runs on every set from the base set all the way up to Neo Genesis. And basically, after the first edition ran out, they were replaced with the Unlimited. There are other differences between these cards usually. The base especially, and one of those phenomenon are known as the Shadowless card. Now, unfortunately, both of my Machops are shadowless, but here is a not shadowless card that can explain the difference. Notice this little border behind the picture? Well, these two don't have it. For the base set, that means that they're shadowless. This is not, well, it is an unlimited Machop, but it's also a shadowless Machop. But that is a different video. Let's just stick to first editions for now. So let's get back to what first edition means. Now, again, first edition should mean the first to come out, right? Well, mostly. One of the big reasons that Wizards of the Coast stopped doing this after Neo Genesis is because doing these first editions made a set date for these things to come out, which put a lot of pressure on the company to get these things out. And when Nintendo took over in 2003, they stopped completely. Ironically, however, in Japan, where this didn't happen, they started doing it with the Pokemon Versus series, and it's been going on ever since. Even with Breakthrough, Breakpoint, and Roaring Skies, the X and Y stuff has first editions on them. Crazy, right? But what about for, the English first editions, the first 9 sets? The biggest question you're probably wondering is how much are these worth? If you've got a first edition at home, how much could you sell it off for? Well, it's hard to say. For collectors, the prime first editions are, well, these, the base set. Base set 2 actually didn't have first editions, but everything else up to Neo Genesis did. Now, first editions from the Neo series aren't seen as rare. We go back to the Wizards of the Coast and their deadline problem. This deadline problem led to first editions being released at the same time or even after the Unlimited set, meaning that they didn't really come out any earlier, which means that technically for collectors they're not too much rarer. You could probably get a few more dollars for them, but the difference between your first edition New Pokedex or your first edition Neo Genesis Centret and the regular one, probably not that big. The difference between your Holo Charizard and your first edition Holo Charizard, that's probably a few $100 difference we're talking about there. But, again, we are talking about base set rares and Neo Genesis commons. So, first edition on its own, well, it doesn't really mean anything itself. The card it's on, the story behind it, and how early that first edition really was, all contribute to its price. And that's why a first edition Machop will probably go for more than a first edition New Pokedex. And, that's first editions. A more helpful guide could probably be found online, but there's not too much information outside a few sites. So I thought I'd clear up the confusion and make sure you don't spend too much money on first editions that aren't really worth that much more money. Of course, first editions are always fun to collect, but don't get caught out with first editions from the early Neo set and spend tons of money on them when they're not worth that much more than the normal ones. Anyway, thanks for watching, happy collecting, and I'll see you next time where we explain Shadowless cards.